What's up, my wieners? It's Dev from Mtg, aka Wackeel O'Neal. That'll do for this one. And today, boy, do I got one for the Jank Bank, or what? I know this channel is kind of known for like stupid combos, but today's combo is especially particularly stupid. That means a lot coming from me because that's basically all I do on my YouTube channels. Today, let's talk about Mystic Twister. Dude, I know you'd be forgiven for thinking that's some kind of like horrible 90s grunge band or something, but you're thinking of Mystic Spiral. That is Jane's brother's band from Daria. Terrible band, great show. But instead, we're talking about a combo between two cards that really don't see enough play, even though they're really popular. I'll tell you more about it on the other side of the intro.
Yo, I'm sorting through some heinous haters like a pooper scooper. I'm just trying to take my life like a Koopa Trooper. I'm double Mario, that mean I'm super. And I'm freaking dangerous like a Chupa Cabre. Got them all day like a Kanye, but I'm way better getting cheddar in Monterey. But Jack, you don't know, man. You got the show, man. You want roast beef? Well, I'm Arby's.
And we're back. Hope you enjoyed the rapping bits there. But anyway, let's begin things by talking about Mystic Sanctuary for just a second. Super cool card. When it first dropped during spoiler season, we were all like, oh, this is the most broken of the whole cycle. It's going to see play everywhere. I can't believe they're doing this to my Magic the Gathering card game. Of course, those complaints haven't necessarily like borne out over time. The card hasn't been spectacular anywhere, although it does show up here and there. Hasn't necessarily been broken or anything. Until now, that is. Here comes the twist, because it turns out the whole time, right up under our noses, while we were more concerned with self-contained powerful cards like Oko and Nissa, let me just put those in my deck and win huge tournaments. Just that easy, right? While we were worried about that kind of stuff, there's been a combo under our noses the whole time with Mystic Sanctuary and Living Twister, a card that was actually on my sleepers list when its set came out. I can never keep Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance straight, honestly. But whichever one came out, Living Twister was on my sleepers list because I just love the card so much. 3 mana, 5 toughness of Lava Coil, really decent stats on this thing, and I love abilities like this, sort of Seismic Assault type abilities. So I really wanted this card to go places, and it just hasn't up to now. I mean, this is a card that's shown up every now and again, but just hasn't really been a real player in Standard or any other format. But look what you can do, everybody, so long as you have 3 other islands in play or whatever. You just pop a Mystic Sanctuary back to your hand with your Living Twister and play it literally every turn, which basically translates to you get to play the same spell every turn, and that has some consequences. For examples, because I know you want them, if you could play the same spell every turn, well, that means you could just time wipe every single turn of the game, and your opponent can never have creatures on the battlefield. Or you could Casualties of War every turn, and your opponent can just never have any permanent types of any kind in play. You could even just grind them down on lands every single turn until they have nothing left, if that's what you wanted to do. Or you could also play Mass Manipulation for X equals 2 or 3 every single turn of the game, if you had the mana to do it, and then, your opponent would probably want to hurt you physically in the back when the FNM is over. So that could also definitely be a reality. But you get what I'm saying here. If you can cast the same spell every single turn, then you can just completely control the game if you can get to that point in the game, especially considering we have extremely powerful spells like this, and things like Time Wipe even coincidentally save our Living Twisters so that we can keep this combo going. Casualties of War, it just blows up everything. It blows up Witch's Oven and Trail of Crumbs and a creature and a land against those decks. Blows up Fires of Invention and a Cavalier and a land against those decks. I mean, it just does everything against everything. It's such a silly card. So we're going to play a couple of copies of that. And Mass Manipulation, I really shouldn't have to explain either. If you can just get this to X equals 1 and play it every single turn, it's basically like getting an Agent of Treachery every single turn. That can only steal a couple of specific permanent types, but they're the permanent types you want to steal. Now, all this sounds super great so far, I'm sure. I think I'm giving a fairly strong pitch for the deck up to this point. But there are obviously, if you just dig a little bit deeper, some pretty glaring issues with our plan. Living Twister costs 2 red and a green, whereas Mystic Sanctuary requires that we have 3 islands. So that's it's hard to parse together, but the best way I've found of pulling this off so far is to just play Chromatic Lantern. Just do it by the bullet. I know it sucks to have this be part of your plan, especially in a format where Teferi is a heavily featured card, and you can just bounce your Chromatic Lantern like a jerk. It's so stupid. You can hit artifacts and enchantments. Like, why wasn't it just creatures on Teferi's bounce ability? But we can fuss about that another day. But basically, the easiest way to make the mana work in this deck without the mana base being $300 and it still doesn't work is just to play Chromatic Lantern. But now that I've sort of laid out all those concerns about the budget, let me also say that that doesn't mean we're not playing powerful cards. Like, we get to play Golos in this deck, who is back. Ladies and gentlemen, he's back. Return of Womack. We get to play Golos in a deck again because he's perfect for this thing. You know, you go search up a Mystic Sanctuary on turn 5, you know, and just start to get the ball rolling. And you got a 3/5 in play, and it pairs really well with Chromatic Lantern too, just letting you play free spells so long as you have 7 mana. I mean, Golos is perfect for this deck. I don't really see any version of the deck that doesn't play 3 or even 4 Golos. But here's where things get interesting. I just caught myself saying that because it's not like things were interesting up to now, right? I mean, the combo is ridiculous, but I guess things will get more interesting directly because we're playing 4 copies of Fae of Wishes in the deck. Peep the way this works, because we can go get any spell that we want to out of our sideboard and then recast it over and over with this ridiculous combo. But we also get, 2 mana, 1/4 flyer. We can pop it back to our hand, do some more stuff. Time Wipe works really well with the Fae of Wishes. In case you hadn't already noticed that interaction, not only can this go get Time Wipe, so you can be sure to cast it on turn 5, but also you can just pop Fae of Wishes back to your hand with that Time Wipe and go wish for something else out of your board. It's a silly combo in and of itself. I just wanted to point out that it's in the deck, but mostly this is in here so we can just go get whatever we need for any given situation and then recast it 30 times over the course of the game, if that's what we're into. So obviously, in case you hadn't noticed this from the motif, this is a combo deck. Learn your archetypes, ladies and gentlemen. But that means that we have pretty much got to find our key pieces by relatively early turns. Turn 3, turn 4, we really got to start doing things with this deck. So that said, I'm going to play 4 copies of Shimmer of Possibility to make more certain that we can find that Chromatic Lantern on time. That's the number one thing that you're looking for. Living Twister can come later. Mystic Sanctuary can come later. That's fine. You really want to establish some modicum of control over the game before you really try to assemble the combo. What you're really trying to do is get that Chromatic Lantern out as quickly as possible so you can actually cast your spells. So, in the interest of doing that, at the very least, we're going to play all 4 Shimmer of Possibility to make more certain that we can get those important pieces in the early game. But, I want to play another card that helps us find important cards in the deck, but I also want to play another card that's abusable when recast over and over with the combo. And in the interest of ticking all those boxes, I'm going to play a single copy of Drawn from Dreams in the deck. If you wanted to decrease the budget even more, you could play like Chemister's Insight or something. But I felt like $1.50 wasn't too much to ask for this ridiculous effect that usually all you got to do is cast it once in a game, and it's pretty gravy, son. You're on the way to winning that game. But if you can cast it every single turn, yeah, you're going to find everything that you need over the course of just a couple of turns. That really helps out. If you got nothing better to recast in your graveyard at the time, this will help you find better stuff to recast from your graveyard. But let's finish off the main deck by playing a little bit of defense here, because obviously our opponents over there playing cards, that's sometimes a bother. So let's play 3 copies of Callous Dismissal and 4 copies of Sinister Sabotage, which can be game-breaking to put back on top of your library. It's just basically, make sure that you have a counterspell every single turn. I don't know what opponents are going to do about that, aside from maybe cast Chandra or something. There's just really not much an opponent can do about a guaranteed counterspell every single turn. It's a tough loop to get out of, so keep that in mind. But it's also going to prevent all kinds of crazy stuff from hitting the table starting on turn 3, and that's an important turn when really crazy garbage starts hitting the table. So Sinister Sabotage can really come in handy a lot of the time. Also Surveils, making sure we get to important cards. That's pretty cool. And quick tip here, there's going to be a lot of games where you want to, if you have, say, a Sinister Sabotage and a Chromatic Lantern in your opening hand, and the 3 lands for that matter, you very often want to not cast Chromatic Lantern until you have at least 5 lands out. That way you can cast Chromatic Lantern and still have 3 mana open to Sinister Sabotage something. Because very often if you waste your turn 3 Chromatic Lanterning, they're going to play like a Rotting Regisaur or Questing Beast, depending on whether or not you played or drew first or something. They're just going to play something backbreaking on that turn if you waste your turn 3 on Chromatic Lantern. So again, when in doubt, play it safe and keep up that Sinister Sabotage. Now, Callous Dismissal, I probably would have much rather played Brazen Borrower in this slot, but Brazen Borrower is like $23 or something filthy right now. It is just inadmissible how expensive that card is. But Callous Dismissal is like 10 cents, and it has the benefit of actually being able to go along with the combo. Like, you can't put a Brazen Borrower back on top of your library with a Mystic Sanctuary, but you can put a Callous Dismissal back on top for what it's worth. And sometimes, if it's your only game plan at the time, it can be worth it. Because I've gotten an Amass token up to like 4/4 by just recasting Callous Dismissal over and over. And it can be very annoying for opponents. But mostly we're using this for some early tempo that also puts a blocking body on the battlefield. It allows us to extend the game a little bit longer. Now here's the mana base right here, running 27 lands in this thing, and at one point we were running nothing but like Watery Graves and Breeding Pools and Stomping Grounds and Steam Vents and Fabled Passages, but those days are gone. It's just a headache of a mana base that, again, didn't work enough. So in the end, just Chromatic Lantern and play a bunch of blue sources to make sure that you proc Mystic Sanctuary as often as possible. Now, one thing I will say before I move on from the lands is that Castle Vantress is still like an all-star in this deck. You know, you'd think that it wouldn't be as important because we're putting stuff on top of our library with Mystic Sanctuary, but note that you can still, if you have the mana, scry with Castle Vantress and look at that card that's underneath the card you put on top, which is still proven invaluable over and over in a bunch of games. So Castle Vanji's still a really crazy card. Now let's get to our sideboard, because this is effectively an extension of our main deck, given that we're playing the full playset of Fae of Wishes. Now, Ether Gust and Return to Nature are the only cards that we're playing multiples of. And honestly, I feel like Return to Nature is one of the best arguments in the entire deck for putting green sources in your mana base. So, like, if you have Breeding Pools, or you want to slip like one Forest and a couple of Fabled Passage in, probably go for that to make sure that you can always cast Return to Nature, because it's really important to be able to do so in the current format. There's a lot of targets for this card. Now, in terms of Ether Gust, the same is true. This card could just go into the main deck. You might be able to even slot this in over a card like Callous Dismissal. The ability to recast this is going to just completely kneecap a bunch of decks right now, because Ether Gust has a ton of extremely critical targets in the current meta. So keep that in mind. But these, again, are the only ones we're playing multiples of. Everything else is sort of a silver bullet so that we can fetch it with Fae of Wishes, and in a lot of circumstances recast the card that we fetch over and over. Now, Grafdigger's Cage we're playing, obviously this isn't an example of a card we can cast over and over, but it is an example of a card that we can wish for with Fae of Wishes and then shut down the cat food, oven decks, and any other kind of reanimation strategies, and that can be a really important line to take. We've got a copy of Negate in there to sort of add to our counterspell base. This is something else we can cast over and over, but it's going to be really important in a lot of matches in game 2 and 3. We very often won't wish for this, but do keep in mind that this is a counterspell you can wish for if you are in that situation. But in any case, we've also got a copy of the Elder Spell in here. This is just for taking out a bunch of Planeswalkers all at one time. Even if we don't really have Planeswalkers in this deck, there are cases you'll get into where you can mass manipulation a Planeswalker away and then Elder Spell the rest of the Planeswalkers away. So that can be really, really sweet. But there's also a copy of Sorcerer's Spyglass in there to shut down problem permanents, usually Planeswalkers, and usually we'll have to wish it up to do that. But since it only costs 2 mana, it's kind of like Grafdigger's Cage. There's very often we can wish it up and play it on the same turn. That, again, is a vital play line. But there's also a copy of Time Wipe in here to fill out the full play set between the main deck and the sideboard. This will often come in games 2 and 3, but you have the option, if you don't have a Time Wipe in your opening hand, to Fae of Wishes for a Time Wipe on turn 4 out of your sideboard. So I feel like this card does a lot more work out of the board than it does out of the main deck, even in game 1. But there's also an Inescapable Blaze, probably the spiciest card in the entire sideboard while we're moving through this here. This is just not a Chandra. If you have the $20, or I think it's down to like 12 to 14 now, you can play the 6-mana Chandra from M20, but Inescapable Blaze has been surprisingly a satisfying card. For the low price in the late game, at least, of 6 mana, uncounterable 6 damage to any target is crazy because it's going to take out not only like Night Pack Ambushers and stuff, and it's uncounterable against Simic, but it's also just going to kill Simic over the course of like 2 or 3 turns. So this is actually something I think we might want to explore a little bit more. Inescapable Blaze has been like surprisingly good for me in a couple of games, but there's also another copy of Casualties of War in the board, so just like Time Wipe, if we don't have it in our opening hand, we can go search it up with Fae of Wishes, but there's also another copy of Mass Manipulation in the board for exactly the same reason, but when it comes to spicier stuff than that, there's a copy of Expansion Explosion. We can go search this up and effectively end the game some of the time, usually on the next turn, so keep that in mind. Even if you just want to blow something up, this is effectively a removal piece that also draws you cards. So sometimes you go search it up with Fae for that reason. But there's also a Clear the Mind to finish off the board here. Clear the Mind, again, looks a little bit spicy, and I really want this to be something like maybe Once in Future, or even Regenesis. I think Regenesis might be decent for this slot. I just wanted something that can make sure that we get back Chromatic Lantern, Living Twister, even Mystic Sanctuary if they die to a Casualties of War, for instance. Just stuff like that, just in case it does go to the graveyard, because we can get back instants and sorceries and whatnot really easily with Mystic Sanctuary. But if anything else, other key pieces to the deck go to the graveyard, we kind of have a hard time getting them back. So you could put Tamiyo in this slot if you wanted to, or again, something like Once in Future or Regenesis. But I went with Clear the Mind because I, again, specifically kind of want something that we can get back Chromatic Lantern with, or at least put it back in our library and try for it again. I wanted something that we could do that with, and obviously if we don't have a Chromatic Lantern in play, we can't cast Once in Future, Tamiyo, Regenesis, any of that stuff. So I think Clear the Mind is probably the best choice if you want a card like that. Now here are your power rankings right here. A final score of Nintendo 64, which is really good considering that this is like a sub $100 deck. It's like $75-$80 at the most to build this deck right now. And I actually think, again, I kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, but I think this deck needs a lot more exploration, which is, again, kind of one of the reasons I'm putting the finished product out at such a relatively low price point. I want the deck to be accessible so that you can kind of get in there, dip your toes, wade into the shallow end with this deck, sort of see how it works, and then again, sort of work from there how you want to change the deck around, what spells you want to be able to get back with Mystic Sanctuary, whether or not you want the whole deck to be Fae of Wishes, and, get rid of these cards like Casualties of War and Time Wipe from the main deck to leave more slots open for more impactful Game 1 cards and stuff, knowing that you've got Fae of Wishes to leverage and go get stuff from your board. I think that could be a way to work it. There's been other YouTubers that have worked on this too, like Mono Black Magic actually got his version of this deck out like 2 or 3 days before me, but I saw it in my recommended, so I know he did this deck, and I was like, oh, you? Because I've been working on this thing for a minute now, but he's doing something completely different. Now, his end goal is still Living Twister, Mystic Sanctuary, Casualties of War, Time Wipe, that kind of stuff. But he's not playing Fae of Wishes at all. He's playing like Renowned Weaponsmith and Guild Globe and Golden Egg and stuff. Like, his version is completely different, especially considering like what we're doing in the early game, our plan for the early game. So, go check his out. I'll leave a link in the description to that deck if you want to check out his version of it. He's a good Magic person now. That's a good dude. But in any case, there's a lot of people working on this deck and a lot of people with various ideas of what the deck could be, and I think that there's definitely someone out there that's going to crack it at some point. So just take this as sort of a starting point for the deck, and I will be playing it on camera if you sort of want to see it before you buy into it even. I will be playing this on camera in a couple of days. It's Thursday as I'm trying to get this out. I'll try to get it out by the weekend. So if you want to see some games in with it, I'll have those up by the weekend. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to make sure you get those in your inbox. But if you are interested in checking out the deck, then just click the first link in the description, and they'll take you to the deck list over on TCG Player. Again, I've tried to really give a lot of attention to the budget in this deck, and even though I wouldn't call the deck purely budget, it's still well under $100, and that is a pretty decent price to pay for a deck that could probably do a fair amount of work in certain F&M environments and is a blast to play. When you can put together the combo, and it's actually not too hard to put together the combo. It might look like Christmas Land to some, but that's kind of what I'm on a mission to really say in this video, is that this is a much easier combo to assemble than you might consider when you first look at the deck. So Again, if you don't believe me, I'll have gameplay of the deck out, but in case you wanted to try it out for yourself, you can click that link in the description and give the deck a go. But anyway, I think I've made my case passionately enough and at length enough at this point for this deck. I just really wanted to put more eyes on this concept because, again, I think it's just a really, really cool combo that actually could have some implications in this format. And I think if in the right hands, this deck could definitely go places. So, again, I just wanted to put more eyeballs on it, and there's other YouTubers covering it right now. And I think that as many eyes as we can get on it right now, the more beneficial it is to the concept. Because, again, I want to see it do things. It's kind of a baby of mine. But in any case, let me know how you felt about it and how you'd change it. Again, let's start a conversation down there in the comments section. And also, Patreon shout-out for this video goes to Barry Swigart or Swigert. That's one of the reasons that I'm doing this Patreon shout-out. Barry, how do you pronounce your last name? Let me know, either on Patreon or in the comment section down there. I see your name constantly. You reply. You comment on like a lot of stuff, but I don't know how to pronounce your name, and it's killing me. How do you say your name? Barry Swigart? That can't be right. It could be. I hope I'm not insulting your name. It just doesn't sound right to me. But anyway, let me know, Barry, down there. You get the Patreon shout out just so I know from now on how to pronounce your name in my head. Anyway, and also thanks for being a patron. You're pretty sweet. There's a bunch more patrons. I'll have their names up at the end of the video. But if you're interested in joining the Patreon, then just check the link in the description. I'll have one down there for you. Or you can just go to patreon.com/SBMTG. Help fund more crazy, kooky, out there decks like I've been doing all season on the channel. The Patreon poll this time around was like 2 kind of off-the-wall decks and then 2 like straightforward, just competitive decks. Like, if you want to win on Arena right now, here's Rakdos Knights and Gruul Adventures. No one cared. No one cared about the competitive decks. Everyone wanted to see the janky decks. That's usually how it goes. So I know my fate on YouTube at this point, but if you wanted to contribute to more janky decks coming into the Magicosphere on YouTube, on the YouTube site, just pitch $1 a month into the Patreon pot, and that would be greatly appreciated. And there's rewards and stuff. But anyway, check it out. Do the YouTube stuff, and I guess I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from the Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.